Welcome to the S.O.A.P video series from Oak Tree Community Church in South Bend, Indiana. We are halfway through the book of Daniel, and we've got 2 sessions left. We're doing 3 chapters each. So in this session, we're in chapters 7, 8, and 9, which is the turning point because in the first 6 chapters, we have a lot of historical narrative, a little bit of prophecy. Everything from here on out is a ton of predictive prophecy, what's coming in the future.
And think about it, with prophecy. So what you read are descriptive words, but what it means is something different. There's no way we can cover this.
Not everything. There's no way.
We're trying to do a short video on what's going on. So we'll leave it up to you to read it. And it's there, but I think we can help. So that I think that's the best we can do. Is our goal today is, like you had said, maybe point out some things that you wouldn't normally hear or normally see. And you had a really good one with the first 3 chapters, and then with these next 3 chapters. So, So, and I won't take credit for this. I've learned this, but I thought it was really. He can take full credit.
I thought this was really cool that chapters 2 through 7 are actually in a parallel. In chapter 2, we have Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the statue, and Daniel says it's 4 kingdoms. In chapter 7, Daniel's going to see a vision of 4 beasts that are the same 4 kingdoms. So chapters 2 and 7 are parallel. Chapter 3, we have the 3 guys goes into the fiery furnace because they will not bow down to, or they will not, or they refuse to not worship God. Too many negatives in there, They worship God.
Worshiping
they worship. They don't. Chapter 6 is Daniel in the lion's den because he's not going to give up worshiping God. So those 2 are parallel. Chapter 4 is the fall of Nebuchadnezzar. Chapter 5 is the fall of Belshazzar, his grandson. So those 2 are parallel. And right there at the end of chapter 4 is Nebuchadnezzar's restoration and his declaration that he truly believes in this God of Israel. So 2 and 7, 3 and 6, 4 and 5 actually create a parallel. And those 6 chapters are all primarily about Gentile kings, Gentile kingdoms, not about Israel. And it's all written in a Gentile language of Aramaic. At the end of chapter 7, beginning of chapter 8, it switches back to Hebrew because now the focus is back on Israel. It's a really cool structure that's going on here in the book that you don't see just by reading straight through necessarily.
So in chapter 7, we're back at time of King Belshazzar, And Daniel has a vision. Imagine that. He keeps having visions in here, and he's going to have visions. And well, let me rephrase that. Usually he's interpreting other people's visions. This time he's the one having a vision.
And that's going to happen several times throughout these chapters coming up.
Now, fortunate and good thing for us, there's an interpreter there. And he has an angel as an interpreter.
It's sort of cool.
Which is way cool, So at a high level, can we say that these visions that he has for the next couple chapters are what we would consider end times?
Absolutely.
About the end times?
Well, some of them. Let's say some of them, because some of them are actually history for us. Babylon is history. That's the head of gold and the first beast, the lion. Persia's history, that's the bear and the silver. Greece's history, that's the leopard here and the bronze. And even Rome is history, this vicious beast and the iron. So some of this was future for Daniel, but it's history for us. Some of it is still future for us and then does fall into the category of end times.
So they keep talking about horns in here, and they make a big deal. So what are the horns trying to represent?
So in prophecy, a lot of times horns represent military or military strength. So we find horns here in Daniel, we find horns in Zechariah, we find horns in Revelation. And basically what it comes down to is rulers of the world at that time, which is still future for us. And then there's this little horn that's going to come up that is extremely blasphemous. He's given lots of authority over the whole world. That's Antichrist that we see in Revelation that is still to come.
Okay. So it seems that anytime we get into Revelation, the book of Revelation, you want to stay in Revelation. Every teacher always comes back here to Daniel.
You have to,
right?
You cannot understand Revelation without Daniel.
Okay,
you can't do it.
Specifically, like chapter 7,
especially chapters 7 through 12.
Okay.
Yeah, this stuff that we're going over the next couple of sessions sets up the foundation for the book of the Revelation.
Okay, so the time frame that's in here, I really want somebody to say, in 3 months this is going to happen, in 4 years this is going to happen, but sometimes we get things like 70 times.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't there just be a period of time?
Well, because we're thinking, like, in Daniel chapter 9, we have the 70 weeks are appointed for you and your people and your holy city. So it's about Israel. We know it's about Israel. We know it's about Jerusalem. But that comes down to a bad translation. Because in Hebrew, what it says is 70 sevens. 70 sets of 7. Okay, so then what the interpretation has to be is sets of 7 what? 7 days, 7 months, 7 whatevers. At the beginning of chapter 9, Daniel is reading the prophet Jeremiah, which I just think is cool anyway, because Jeremiah's prophecy has made it over to Babylon. Yeah. Daniel's reading it, and he reads that Israel will be captive for 7 years. So years is already in his mind. So when he comes down a little bit later into the prophecy, into the vision, and says 70 sets of 7, he's already thinking years. He doesn't have that question. We're so far removed, we're like, what is it? It's no question that it's years. And when we do the math in the prophecy, it does turn out that it's 70 sets of 7 years, or 490 years. 483 of them have already passed. From the time of Nehemiah, when the command was issued to go rebuild the city, the wall, and the moat. That's not Zerubbabel and Ezra, the time of Haggai and Zechariah. Those were building the temple, not the city.
Right.
Nehemiah gets the command to build the city. From Nehemiah's day until Messiah comes and is cut off at Easter and Holy Week, what do you know? It's 483 years. Okay. And like to the day, you can count. Right. I can show you the math. The math works. I can show you the math. I'm not going to do it right this second, but I can.
Yep, I know. Right? Yeah, you usually get your whiteboard out and show it.
Just drawing it all
you're
over.
Itching to.
Which means that there's still 7 years left that are appointed for your people, that's Israel, because talking about Daniel, and your holy city, Jerusalem. We talk about the 70th week of Daniel, or the tribulation period, is 7 years, not because we're just making stuff up, but because Daniel talks about 7 years. Daniel talks about half of 7 years is a time plus times plus half a time. 1 plus 2 is 3 plus half is 3.5. That number shows up in the Revelation as 1,260 days and 42 months. It's 3.5 years.
Right.
So all the math works when you bring it all together instead of just picking out, little pieces.
Right. It does take work.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But a lot of this stuff is, like you said, interpreted for us. An angel comes out and says, "Here's what it means." Yeah. Not on every detail.
Yeah. So is it right? So Gabriel comes down, right? And that's the first time an angel is named in Daniel.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think Michael is
going to be named as well.
And those are the only two that I know of that are named.
Yes.
The angels that are named
in the Bible.
Right.
Now, if you look at some of these extra books that are written that actually can be great for history, we just wouldn't put them on the same level as Scripture. There are other angels named. Mm-hmm. Now, is that true? Is that false? I don't know. But they have Gabriel and Michael in those books as well. So it's possible. We know that angels have names. We just, don't know what they all are.
Yeah, right. So I'm not positive where we go from here, right? So we've skinned the top a little bit. If we get any deeper, we'll be here
all night, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think there are a few more things we can probably bring out. So in the statue in chapter 2, you mentioned that there was this boulder that came down. Right. It was made without hands. It wasn't cut with hands. Right. So what
was that the words? It wasn't cut.
Yeah, it was not
by
cut
hand
by
with
hand.
hands.
Right.
Yeah.
And it smashed the whole statue. Right. Well, here we find that we have the Son of Man is standing before the Ancient of Days. That phrase, Son of Man, is accepted far and wide as a messianic title. So we go over to the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Jesus keeps referring to himself as the Son of Man, the Son of Man, the Son of Man. What we hear is, okay, whatever. Yeah, what they heard was Daniel chapter 7, the Messiah, the one who stands in God's own throne room. Right. And this is his kingdom that is going to smash all the other kingdoms of the world, and it will fill up the whole world. Every time Jesus called himself the Son of Man, he was claiming to be the Messiah from Daniel chapter 7. Okay, so that's a huge thing that I want to make sure that we understand.
Right. And ancient of days is always God.
God the Father.
Yeah, God the Father.
Yeah.
Right.
So he is claiming to receive the kingdom from God. That's one of the reasons the religious leaders could not stand him, because he was making a claim to be in God's throne, a claim of deity. Right. In Daniel chapter 8, we find another vision of a ram and a goat. And it's similar to the animals in chapter 7. In fact, the ram is Medo-Persia and the goat is Greece. But they're not the same animals, okay? There's all sorts of debate over why they're different animals and stuff, but there's enough similarities. The ram has 2 horns, okay, and one is Media, one is Persia, not a problem, just like the 2 arms of the...
And one was bigger than the other, right, signifying a bigger army or more populous.
Right, just like the 2 arms of the statue, and just like the bear had 1 paw higher than the other. So you can see the pattern all the way through. Yeah. What's cool about chapter 8 here then is that Greece is named. And when Daniel names the nation of Greece, it was barely a spot on the map. Okay, they had their own little world going on over there, but they were not a threat to anybody. They certainly weren't a threat to Persia. Okay, Persia's right next to Babylon. You can see that threat. Babylon's right next to Assyria. You can see that threat. Persia and Greece are nowhere close to each other. Right. And Greece is this tiny little spot over here in Europe that everybody else thought was still barbaric. Okay. But the leopard with the wings, that's Alexander the Great. We look in world history and we find out that Alexander's Grecian Empire swept over the world in an unprecedented manner, in unprecedented speed.
So the speed with the cat and the wings.
Yeah, and then what happened is he died early. He died at 33 years old. And his king, he didn't have a successor in place yet or whatever, so his empire was split into 4 generals. Right. Okay, and then Rome took over, and we see all of that stuff happen. And Daniel said, this is what's going to happen. And so the book of Daniel is attacked a lot by saying, there's no way he could say that. Obviously, if Daniel existed at all, he could not have written this. It must have been written much, much later after the fact. Okay, because we don't believe in predictive prophecy. So somebody lets their philosophy determine how they interpret the Bible. You don't want to do that.
Noted.
No, don't want to do that. I think one more thing that's significant, and we'll be in chapter 9, and then we can hold off, and definitely we can take your questions and your comments on this stuff. But when Daniel's reading Jeremiah, I think you bring this up, is he sees that it's going to be they're going to be in exile for 70 years, and he sees that 70 years is almost up there. Right. So he prays, and what was it that he was praying?
So this prayer was actually pretty amazing, right? So he's praising to God, and this is a guy who was a young man when Nebuchadnezzar came in, and he's telling God, we were wrong.
Yeah,
right? So he's, he's apologizing for himself, but he's also apologizing for the nation of Israel.
Yeah.
Almost like Nebuchadnezzar did too,
Yep.
Apologizing for that.
Yep.
And, that, God was considerate, waited on us, and, thank you for what's going on. And I thought that was kind of an amazing prayer.
He almost took on the role of like the priest.
Yeah, exactly.
For a moment.
Yeah.
As he stood between God and the nation of Israel, he interceded with God like Moses did, like some of these other, priests or prophets did. Even though Israel, the Jewish people, never really considered him a prophet or a priest. He wasn't either. Yeah. He was a statesman in a foreign land. But he stood there and said, God, we have sinned. Right. Please restore us. Isn't that, after 60 plus years of captivity, pushing 70 years of captivity, he's 80 plus years old. He says, this is what we need. And he never knows if he'll see Jerusalem again.
Right.
We think he probably died in Persia, never went back to Israel, never went back to Jerusalem, died in captivity in a sense. But he was still praying for his people.
Yeah, I'm looking through my notes. There was a cool thing that Gabriel said to Daniel, too. Your prayer was heard.
Yeah.
There it is.
Verse 23, right?
Yeah. So Gabriel, right, an angel, is talking to Daniel after this prayer, and it said, at the beginning of your prayer, a message went out.
Yep.
Now, I don't know what that means, but it's cool.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Right? I don't know how a message got out. Daniel's praying, but something happened, and we often think, especially me, why would I bother pray? Right? Prayer doesn't do anything. At the beginning of your prayer, a message went out, right? Because you prayed, something happened.
Yep.
And then he ends with saying, I've come to say you are a great value in God's sight.
Isn't that amazing? How'd you like to hear that?
Exactly.
An angel shows up and said, all of heaven heard your prayer, and I am sent here to let you know, number one, you're special to God.
Right.
You're of great value to God. And here's the message.
Right. And I think it ties into, you were really elevating Daniel. And he seemed to be taking on the national assumption of like what a priest would.
Yeah.
And God is acknowledging it.
Yeah. Yep. God has accepted that.
Yeah. So how cool is that?
Yeah. Just so amazing. So amazing.
Right.
And of course, like Gary said, there's tons of stuff in here that we barely scratched the surface on.
There's 2,300 days.
Didn't mention at all,
Okay, we're not talking about that.
Didn't mention at all. If you have questions, when you have questions, I'm sure you'll have questions. We all do. But feel free to forward those our way. We'd love to tackle those with you, help you read, help you understand this. Next time we'll come back, we'll finish the book. There's more visions and some really cool stuff about angels that we don't want to miss in chapter 10. Nice. And so one of my favorite chapters, I love all of Daniel, but when it comes to angels, this is sort of an overlooked chapter, and I think it's some important stuff. So make sure you come back next time and share this with your family and friends. Ask us your questions. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.